all of the praises to the Most High and His Son, Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi Towards, and double honor to the Apostles of the Greatmillstone, and salutations to the Yakimal that continue to further this ministry throughout the four winds of the earth, and shalom to those that are learning and listening and growing thereby as well. And it's the brother Mark coming at you with another video, and I'm responding to this particular video of the rapper Fredro Starr from the Onyx. You know, if you brothers know about that, especially you brothers that are older, you know about Fredro Starr and the group that he comes from, which is Onyx, which was formulated in the early 90s, and he had this record called Reperations, and he raps with other guys, some other artists in his video, and the subject matter is reparations. And I listened to a little bit of it, and I can just sense the frustration from their voices as they're putting down their lyrics to the song and expressing themselves. So I just want to read Isaiah 42 verse 22. So it says, "But this is a people robbed and spoiled, and they are all of them snare in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none deliver, for a spoil, and none save restore." So originally, what was the original reason why we were brought so low to this point, robbed and spoiled? Because we have been robbed physically from out of our land, and we've been robbed of our nationality, and spoiled because before we were enslaved, we were rich, we were kings. And, predominantly, as history has it, we were taking the slaves from West Africa. And in West Africa, you had a king such as Mansi Musa, if I'm saying his name correctly, which, he was the greatest king in his time in the Mali Empire. And, he produced a lot of gold, an abundant amount of gold. So we were rich. And then you had us ruling in the lands of Europe, which is what they don't really go into in these school systems or even in these colleges. They just like to present to you that we were just slaves, and before then we never had no foundations, we never had no empires of our own, but we actually did. And as well as you had the Aztecas, they were rich as well. But as I'm going to say again, the media again presents to you that we never did anything, but we actually did a lot, and our history is very vast. When you actually deal with the history of the Israelite man, you'll find out that we were involved in every single thing, and this is why they have to downplay our records and actually use our records and put themselves in our records and say that that's what they did. And I'm talking about the they that I'm talking about is the so-called white man. That's what they did. They took our history, and most of it they used for themselves. Like during the time of the Renaissance period, what they would do is they would take our dark art and whitewash the images. So this is why when you open up certain Bibles today, all of the saints and all of the holy men are painted as so-called white people, when in fact they were all so-called black people. All right, and it proves that that they've had to been so-called black people, because so-called black people, as I use the term so-called because we were the Israelites were known for being closer to the Most High. So if they were closer to the Most High at that time, then our people would uphold that kind of mentality today, because that's who they were. That's who they were at the time, and that's where they are today. So it doesn't make sense for so-called white people to say that they were closer to God and they were calling themselves the saints, and then all of a sudden now they just don't believe in God at all. Okay, it doesn't make sense. So when you talk about the saints, which were and I'll even go as far as talking about the men that were calling them saints in Europe during the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, they had to have been so-called black men. And the term saint goes back to the Israelites, spoken of in the Bible, which is what we and who we descend from. So again, as I say, that would have to be talking about us. All of those saints and those men in Europe in the Middle Ages would have to be us. Okay? So all of the art that they're taking from our people and put themselves in, that's not referring to them. Even if they convey this lie so strongly, it's not referring to them. Now, if you want to talk about the Roman Empire, then now we're talking. If you want to talk about the Greek Empire, again, now we're talking. Now, that's the true history of the so-called white people. When you really deal with the Romans and the Greeks, they didn't really believe in God. They believed in other philosophies and other gods, as they do yet this very moment in time. They don't believe in God. They believe in science and other philosophies of men. But we as a people, we always believed in the Most High. Somehow, someway, we always believed in the higher power. Okay? Even as it stands right now, if you go to every so-called black community, all you have is churches around the place. And if it's a big so-called black community, then you're going to have probably like 2 churches or 3 churches right next to each other. So that's showing you who the Israelites are, who the people of God are. If you go to a so-called white community, which are Edomites, what are you going to have? You're going to have malls, you're going to have clubs, you're going to have pubs. No church will be there in sight. Not saying that they don't go to church, because they go to church because they've been told to believe that the Lord is going to have mercy upon them, or they've just been, brought up that way to believe in God. But in all reality, generally speaking, in their soul, they don't really believe. Okay? And it's not in them for them to believe. Their belief is in other things. They believe in what's of the carnal world, rather that which is of the spiritual world. We as a people, we're more spiritually awakened. But anyway, I didn't mean to dive into something else. I want to deal with this situation that we're in, as you have a lot of our people crying about, as we all have been crying about, for as long as we've been in this condition that we're serving right now under this so-called white man, enslaved conditions. Crying out because we've been done unjustly in many forms of ways, and we've been oppressed in many forms of ways. I'm going to say again. So the reason why we're in this predicament as a people is simply because, getting back to the original point, because we turned our back against our power. That's why we've been robbed and spoiled as a people, and even the wickedness that we still continue to do among each other is the reason why we've fallen so greatly, even yet this particular point in time. Okay, so I want to get what's written in the book of Deuteronomy, which is the second book of the law, verse 12. And when you read the scriptures in the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Old Testament and the New Testament, and just this Bible overall, it's referring to the history of the so-called black man and so-called Latino Native American man. This is our historical documentation. So let's get into it. This is Deuteronomy 9, verse 12. It says, "And the Lord said unto me, Arise and get thee down." Oh, no, wait there. That's not really what I want to get. I don't want to get that. Right. This is the one right here. Deuteronomy 9, verse 16. This is it right here. "And I looked, and behold, you had sinned against the Lord your power, and had made you a molten calf, and ye had turned aside quickly out of the way which the Lord had commanded you." So after we left Egypt and we was dwelling in the wilderness for some time, our people reverted back to worshiping the idols of Egypt. And that's what brought forth the curses later on. And then, we really kept that tradition of reverting back to the gods of the other nations and the philosophies of the other nations. And this is why we've fallen so greatly to this very particular moment in time, because of the deeds that was done from our forefathers. Now, had we upheld the righteous tradition given unto us, we wouldn't be robbed and spoiled today. You see, because things happened because the deeds that was done in the past. So whatever you do now is what's going to make up for your tomorrow. So what we did is what paved the way for us to be in this situation, for us to be in captive under other people that have not our best interests at heart, that actually naturally despises us because it's in their genetic makeup to do so, going all the way back to the history of the so-called white man, the first so-called white man, which they descend from Esau, which was the first so-called white man in the Bible. Now you have people out there that will say otherwise, but that's really the truth. The truth of the matter is the so-called white people descend from the Edomites, as well as you can also call them, which are a people or a man. I'll say Esau now, a man, which hated his brother Jacob, who we descend from. We descend from a man by the name of Jacob. Okay? And when they were both born, when they were in the womb of Rebecca, their mother, they were fighting in the womb. So there's always been this natural negative tension between the two brothers. And this is why so-called black people today and so-called white people cannot coexist together. You see? So there's still that ongoing battle between the two brothers. But in the end, the good guy will win, which is our forefather, Jacob. His descendants I'm talking about, more in particular. Okay, his descendants will overcome the wicked one, which is the so-called white man. And eventually, we will overcome this man by the second return of the Messiah, Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi. Okay, we say Yahawah Bahasham Yahawashi because we want to reverence both of the names, the Most High and his Son. Because we believe that the Heavenly Father sent his Son as it is written. But the Christians believe that who they call Jesus Christ, he's God, but he's not God. There's two entities. You have the Most High Creator, you have the Father in heaven, and as well as you have the Son. And it's going to take his Son to come back so that eventually, physically, we can overcome this devil. And then through him, we will be restored as a people. Another thing you got our people complaining about is the idea that they've not received reparations. But true reparations will come to our people, but just not in the way that they expect it. And the way that we're going to be restored as a people. And before I get there, what I want to do is I want to finish what I was reading before. In terms of the point, I want to get back to the point. I want to get back to the point. I want to finish that off and then get to that later on about, our reparations. So anyway, let's read this. This is Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. I call heaven and earth to recall this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, and therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. So what did we do? We chose death. How did we choose death? By falling back, turning our back against the Most High, and following the traditions of the other nations, worshiping their gods, which we were in violation of the first commandment, which is written in Exodus 20, verse 4. Let me read this. Actually, verse 3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, and thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. That's what we were in violation of. That's how we chose death. And this is why we are in the conditions that we face today, going all the way back to what we did in the past. So we're paying for the sins of our forefathers, which in all reality, we are forefathers coming back in a reincarnation. Because, life is a cycle, man. Like they like to tell you, oh, you only die once. You may die once in one lifetime, but you come back in another. That's how life works. And you come back as a newborn baby. The spirit, which is the true you, comes into that new body, which people may consider you as a newborn baby, but it's just you coming back all over again. Okay? And when you come back, you fulfill the judgment of the wrongs that you've committed. So let's get this. Let's continue to read on. It talks about that. It says, "And thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy power, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me." That's where you get the term generation from the word gene. Okay, so let's look up that word generation in the Hebrew to get more in depth into that. Yeah, they don't have the Hebrew interlinear in this right here concerning the word generation. So we're just gonna have to move forward. But like I was saying, you come back as a newborn baby. You die in one lifetime and you come back in another as a newborn baby. That's the cycle of life, as it reads in the book of Ecclesiastes 1, verse, I believe it's verse 7 or verse 8, where it says, "There's nothing new under the sun, saying that it is new, it have already been of old time. The thing that was is the thing that shall be." So everything is regenerative. Everything comes back. All right. And the reason why things come back and history has a way of repeating itself is because the same people come back, do the same thing all over again in the next lifetime. So as well as you had in the past, you've always had prophets, you've always had kings and rulers, and you have those same men in those same positions right now. Like, for example, the Caesars that were in ancient Rome are back in their same positions at this very particular moment in time, and the prophets that were at the time are prophets today. So whoever you was in your past life, that's what you're going to come back and do, because that's just the spirit or the kind of spirit that you have. You're made to do this particular thing. If you're made to do a particular thing, then that's what you're going to be doing. Okay? Past, present, and future. So let's move forward. So as I was saying, going back to the original point again, this is why we've been robbed and spoiled as a people. Because we're paying for what we've done in our past life. It's really what it is when you break it down. But eventually, we will be restored. And you want to talk about reparations, we're going to get that more and then some. So let's get into that right now. Jeremiah 30 verse 16, it says, "Therefore all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them shall go into captivity, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey." Because remember, we were preyed upon, we were spoiled, and as it says in the book of Isaiah 42 verse 22. Let me read this again. "But this is a people robbed and spoiled." So we were robbed and spoiled. And guess what? We're going to rob and spoil those that have robbed and spoiled us. Okay? That's exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to repeat myself again. We're going to rob and spoil those that robbed and spoiled us. Now, if that ain't reparations, I don't know what is. So it says, "Therefore all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey." So all of these nations that were involved in enslaving us as a people, they're going to be enslaved by us. And there's a scripture that I'm thinking about right now, Revelations 13, 9 and 10. It says, "He that leadeth in captivity shall go into captivity." So that's justice. That's true justice, which will be served during the time of the Lord's second return. When the Lord comes back and he delivers his people and he destroys those that have destroyed us, then we're going to enslave those that enslaved us too. "For I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, save the Lord, Yahawah, because they called thee an outcast, saying, This is Zion whom no man seeketh after." And we have been an outcast. We've been casted out of our land, which should be Jerusalem today. Okay? And we're going to get that land back as well. Eventually, we're going to get that land back. But again, as I'm going to say, we're going to get that land back, not by our own will, but by the will of the Lord. And the way that we're going to get our land back is when the Messiah makes a second return. Like you had a bunch of people which are in the land today that are our race. And they got there because of this individual by the name of Ben Ami, Israel, which he gained popularity in the 1960s and onwards even into the early 80s. And our people moved back there because of him. And now they've been told to leave Israel. And the reason why they've been told to leave Israel, because ultimately the Most High don't want them there as of yet. We're going to go back there through the Messiah when the Messiah makes a second return. That's how we're going to be brought back to the land. See, the Lord wants to do things in his own way. So we have to expect and look out for the prophecies to come to pass, and also the greatest prophecy of them all, as I've said, us returning back to the land when the Messiah makes a second return and delivering us. That's what we got to look out for. So let's continue on. This is Jeremiah 30 verse 18. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will bring again the captivity of Jacob's tents, and have mercy on his dwelling places." And this is talking about us. "And the city shall be builded upon her own heap, and the palaces shall remain after the manner thereof. And out of them shall proceed thanksgiving, and the voice of them that make merry. And I will multiply them, and they shall not be few. I will also glorify them, and they shall not be small. And their children also shall be as aforetime, and their congregation shall be established before me, and I will punish all that oppress them." So we're going to be great as during the time of the Solomon and during the time of King David. And at that particular point in time, we was at our glorious. We was at our glorious estate. So we're going to get back to that all over again. You see, and this is something that they don't teach you in these schools and these colleges, that your history is in the Bible. And during the time of these two kings, as I've mentioned, we were at our glorious estate. And we're going to get back to that in the kingdom. So yeah, right now, we're robbed and spoiled and put to a curse. But eventually we shall rob and spoil those, and we'll be put to being blessed forever and ever. As it says in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, the saints shall possess the kingdom forever and ever. All right. So that's the last end of the descendants of Jacob, which are indeed the Israelites. And the Israelites today are the so-called blacks, so-called Latinos, and Native American Indians that will receive great honor. Okay. So that's all I have to say. With that, I say shalom.